I've spent most of my life outdoors. I've hiked through national forests, camped in the middle of nowhere, and always considered myself someone who could stay calm under pressure. So when I decided to spend a weekend exploring a remote section of the Oregon wilderness with nothing but my backpack and my German Shepherd Ranger, I wasn't worried. Looking back now, I probably should have been. It started as one of those perfect fall mornings. The trees stretched endlessly in every direction, towering over the narrow trail like ancient walls. The air smelled of pine needles, damp earth, and the first hint of winter. Overnight, a light snowfall covered the ground, just enough to blanket everything in white without hiding the trail. Ranger stayed close, occasionally darting ahead to sniff fallen logs before running back up to me. It was quiet, not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of silence that feels like the entire forest is holding its breath. Around noon, the weather changed. The wind picked up, and the snow started falling harder. Within 30 minutes, the trail I'd been following had almost disappeared completely beneath the fresh snow. I checked my GPS. No signal. Not unusual, so I pulled out my paper map instead. And that's when I realized I'd wandered farther north than I'd planned. Not dangerously far, just farther. I figured I'd retrace my steps, except every direction suddenly looked exactly the same. White ground, dark trees, gray sky. No landmarks, no footprints. The snow had erased everything. I walked for another hour before finally admitting something to myself that I really didn't want to say out loud. I was lost. Not turned around, not slightly off course. Lost. By late afternoon, the temperature dropped fast. I knew hiking in the dark would only make things worse, so I found a small clearing surrounded by thick pine trees. It wasn't much, just enough room for a fire. I gathered dead branches while Ranger watched the tree line. Every few minutes he'd stop moving completely. His ears would stand straight up, and he'd stare deep into the woods. I kept looking where he was looking, but I didn't see anything. Eventually, I got the fire going. The warmth was almost instant. The orange glow pushed the darkness back just enough to make me feel safe. Or, at least, safer. Night came early. The forest disappeared into complete blackness beyond the firelight. If you've ever been in the woods with absolutely no moonlight, it's hard to explain. You don't just lose your vision, you lose your sense of distance. The darkness isn't empty, it feels solid, like a wall surrounding you. Ranger curled up beside me at first. Then, sometime around midnight, he stood up, slowly, his ears locked forward. He wasn't growling, he wasn't barking, he was listening. I whispered his name, Ranger. He ignored me. His eyes stayed fixed on something behind the trees. I grabbed my flashlight, pointed it towards to where he was staring. Nothing. The beam bounced off the snow-covered trunks, empty branches, shadows. That's it. I laughed to myself. Probably a deer, maybe an elk. Animals move around at night all the time. Still, Ranger didn't sit back down. Nearly 10 minutes passed before he finally relaxed. The next morning, I packed everything up and started walking again. Snow continued falling. Not heavily, just enough to make sure every footprint disappeared within minutes. By noon, I still hadn't found a road, or another trail, or another person. The only sound were my boots crunching through the snow and Ranger moving beside me, until I heard another crunch. It was behind me. I stopped walking. The sound stopped too. I turned around. Nothing. Just rows of pine trees fading into white fog. I kept moving. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Again. 3 footsteps. Not mine. I spun around faster this time. Still, nothing. I waited almost a full minute. Silence. Eventually, I convinced myself it was the snow falling from branches. That's all it had to be, right? The second night was colder, much colder. The fire struggled against the wind. I wrapped myself tighter in my sleeping bag while Ranger lay beside me. At some point, I must have drifted asleep, and then I heard it. A single branch snapping. Close. My eyes opened immediately. The fire had almost burned out. The forest beyond it was completely black, and Ranger wasn't beside me anymore. I sat up. Ranger? No response. My heart immediately started racing. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it around the campsite. Nothing. His bedroll was empty. His leash was still hanging from my backpack. He had simply vanished. I started calling louder. Still, nothing. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then somewhere deep in the trees, I heard a bark. Once, and then silence. I grabbed another piece of burning wood from the fire and started walking towards where I heard him. Every instinct told me not to leave the campsite, but I wasn't leaving him out there. The deeper I walked, the quieter everything became. No wind, no birds, no movement, just my breathing. Then I found fresh tracks in the snow. They weren't Rangers, at least, I don't think they were. The snowfall had completely softened their edges. Whatever made them had passed through just minutes before. I followed them for about 50 yards before realizing something strange. They didn't continue forward, they simply stopped. No turn, just gone. Like whatever had made them just vanished into thin air. A low whine came from somewhere to my left. Ranger? Another whine. I turned, and there he was. Standing between two trees, completely still. He wasn't injured. He wasn't trapped. He was just looking at me. I smiled with relief. Then I noticed something. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, back toward the campsite. Slowly, I turned around. The forest was empty. At least, that's what I told myself. We made it back to the camp without another sound. The fire was nothing but glowing embers by the time we returned. Ranger laid down beside me almost immediately. I remember thinking how strange that was. Normally, he would circle 3 or 4 times before settling down. That night, he just kept a watchful eye over me. He never blinked. I tried convincing myself that he was exhausted, maybe just scared. I was too. Eventually, I fell asleep. Morning came with clear skies for the first time in days. The snow had stopped. Sunlight poured through the trees, turning the forest into something almost beautiful. For the first time since getting lost, I felt hopeful. I packed my gear and stamped out the fire, and started walking. Ranger followed close behind. Usually he'd wander ahead, sniffing every fallen branch and racing through the snow. Now, he stayed directly at my heels, silent. Every time I stopped, he'd stop, and every time I looked back, he was already looking up at me. Not at the trail, not at the trees, just at me. I laughed nervously. "You okay, buddy?" He tilted his head. He just stared. Hours later, I finally reached a narrow Forest Service road. I couldn't believe it. After 2 days of wandering, I was finally out. A pickup truck eventually came around the bend. The driver slowed and rolled down the window. "You alright?" "I got turned around in the storm." He looked relieved. "I thought you were one of the missing hunters." "Hunters?" I'd asked the man. It was after I had tossed my bag into the back of his truck when I had noticed something out of the corner of my eye. I noticed Ranger's prints in the snow. They look different. Not like a normal dog's print. Definitely not like Ranger's. They look like the ones I had just found the night before. I looked back at what I assumed this whole time would be Ranger waiting for me. But instead of my eyes landing on my old loyal friend, they were shockingly met with a disfigured half-dog, half-humanoid creature crouching about 70 feet behind me, hiding in the brush. I was as disturbed as I was too stunned to speak. It's like the more I looked at it, the more dog-like it was trying to become. "Ranger," I finally mustered the courage to yell out. The creature sunk deeper into the bushes, as if it was embarrassed of itself. It started whimpering like Ranger would have. Suddenly, it bolted forward, out towards me as fast as its matted, scrawny legs could propel it. This was no dog. This wasn't Ranger. I jumped into the truck and we rode off. The following weeks, I kicked myself over everything that had happened the night before, about what I could have done different to keep Ranger safe. The trucker had told me that there's been sightings of a creature haunting those woods for years, and that every year hunters will go out missing, trying to hunt the beast down. No one's ever succeeded, and only a few have truly ever seen it. He believes that that day, we saw it. The Skinwalker of the Northern Oregon woods, and I was his next victim.